I'm Matt Pillar, host of the Business of Biotech podcast. And if you're listening to my voice right now, but not seeing my face, maybe you haven't heard that we've launched a new Business of Biotech videocast page under the Listen and Watch tab at bioprocessonline.com. There, you'll find hundreds of videos of my interviews with biotech builders, categorized by topic like finance and capital markets, regulatory, discovery, and manufacturing. Don't try it if you listen while driving, but be sure to check it out when you get where you're going. Go to bioprocessonline.com, hit the Listen and Watch tab, and choose Business of Biotech in the dropdown. Yochi Slonim made a name for himself in global tech hubs around the world, from San Francisco's Silicon Valley to Tel Aviv's Silicon Wadi. Notably, he was co-founder of billion-dollar Mercury Interactive, which HP acquired for $4.5 billion. And previous to that, a leader at Tecnomatix, which sold to UGS and eventually was acquired by Siemens. Those were the bigger deals that came on the heels of several other of Yochi Slonim startups. What's all that got to do with the Business of Biotech? I'm Matt Pillar. This is the Business of Biotech. On today's episode, we are visiting with Yochi to learn about his foray into biopharmaceuticals with Anima Biotech, a company he's been building for the past 10 years. Anima's approach to tech-enabled drug discovery and development is multi-pronged, yielding, as you may have guessed, a target and drug discovery and development platform, a handful of partnerships with some very heavy hitters in big bio, and a deep development pipeline of its own. Yochi, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure to have you. We're honored. And before we get into the Anima story and go too deep into the technologies that you're building, we need to kind of get a background on you. Because as I mentioned in that intro, before you were a biotech entrepreneur, you were decidedly a tech entrepreneur, primarily in software. What motivated the move to get into biotech?
That's actually a funny story, I would say, and very unconventional, because you would expect somebody to sit and plan, what they're going to do. And indeed, I built and took public or sold several software companies. And the way that this got started, I was working with startup companies as an investor. And I was introduced to the technology idea of Anima by my co-founder, and I became the first investor in the company. I looked at this, and he was kind of presenting it to me in a way that appealed to me, because my last software company was something that actually I did several software companies in the field of automated software testing and debugging. And this company was actually quite easy to explain. It was like a black box that you have on the airplane that records the flight. When it crashes, you can see what happens. They dig the black box and they investigate, and you can hear what happened in the cockpit and see all the different engine conditions. And so this was actually a black box for software application. It would record everything that happens in the software application. And then if something happens wrong, you could go back in time and investigate what happened. Yeah. So we were selling this to banks, financial institutions, e-commerce sites, all these complex stuff. And I sold this company to BMC Software, back in 2006, and I was looking for other stuff to do. And then he came to me and he said, I have a black box for cells, for biology. It records everything that is happening in the cells, and actually it records it in images. And you can see the ribosomes making the proteins, and the proteins are made from mRNA, which I knew nothing about back then.
Yeah.
And, right. and this is like a processor that executes software code, and the mRNA is the software code, and the ribosomes run over it, and you can see all that in images. And this recording is like a black box. Now you can go back and understand why a disease is happening, for example, because the assembly of the protein went wrong, the translation went wrong. So this kind of looked to me like a tech company. And I asked him, so we are going to build like an imaging system over all these cells? And yes, we are going to build it. And I had not much, other than a hunch about it, but I decided to bet on it. I don't even remember why. And I became an investor in the company. And this dragged me on kind of down a rabbit hole that was completely unexpected.
Yeah.
And that became a very long rabbit hole, because the timelines, I wasn't aware of the timelines of actually doing things. But then I became aware that this technology generates images, and tons of them, millions of them, and this is like big, deep data. And it kind of attracted me that with all my skills in technology, we could build a platform that would kind of look at all that data and start to analyze it. And this was still an academic phase, but it drew me back very, very strongly into biology, which was a challenge by itself, by the way.
Real quick, Yogi, just to put a timestamp on this, this was like, so Anima was founded, I think officially founded, like 2014, but this period that you're talking about was quite a few years before that, correct? Like you guys were talking about the foundations of this technology in what year roughly?
We are talking about the idea stage, which was the initial journey was back then, which led us to the University of Pennsylvania, where we were parked in the academia actually for 10 years. So between 2005, where this was actually invented as an idea, until 2014, it was sitting in the academia and the platform technology, so to speak, was developed.
Yeah, and I just wanted to get that specification because it's important context in the context of this conversation around big data and bio. 2005 was eons ago. Like that was some early days for the concept of big data in biotech.
Indeed. And I was actually involved back then in another aspect of big data, which was super interesting for me, was fintech. Mm-hmm. And fintech was about, let's predict the stock market. Yeah. It's again, huge, big data, and let's see if we can do something with it. So there was no like AI, but people were talking already about the early, I would say, phases of what became machine learning. And they were trying it both algorithmically, but both like, let's do it non-algorithmically. It's kind of seeing the conditions and just acting on them based on patterns. So that pattern recognition is the beginning of, if you want to say it, AI in many ways, clustering of information, learning from big data, but it wasn't yet AI. But the roots of that, which actually appealed to me, were already, as you were saying, back many years ago.
Yeah. And at the time, I mean, the technology was cool. You were starting to envision some applications for it, but in those years, there was no way probably in the back of your head that you thought, I want to be a drug developer. I want to develop a pipeline of drug candidates. No?
So when we took the technology out of the university, it was capable of doing in a single cell, in a single experiment, visualize all the mRNA translation events in light pulses. These images were looking like the Milky Way at night, with the stars glowing. Mm-hmm. Wherever proteins were working on the mRNA of interest, it was showing light. Whenever they were not doing it, it wasn't. So you could see where, when, and how much of a particular mRNA, specific one, is being translated. And I was looking at that, and I don't know why, by the way, because I didn't know much about biology. We'll talk about it later, how I became a biologist down the road. But I actually looked at that and I said, but this is valuable as an academic tool. If we want to do something with it, what it's going to be. And I don't know why, because I didn't even knew back then the words drug discovery. But I said to myself, in every industry, you need to go for the main street, not for the side streets to look for the interest and the money. And so I said, maybe this could help us, treat diseases. And then my co-founder, a biologist, and she said, well, this is called drug discovery screening. This is what we can do with that. We could actually turn this into a big platform that is looking at millions of these images. And where there is light, there is protein being made, we'll be looking for small molecules that are modulating the light. If they turn off the light, they kind of inhibit the production of the protein. If they increase the light, they increase the translation of the protein. And I was asking her, this is something that people are doing? She said, yes, screening, but not like this. This is high content screening at high throughput. We'll need to do deep screening, seeing all these images and doing this over millions and millions of them. over hundreds of thousands of compounds, and I don't know how to do that. I said, wait, this level of automation is like tech company. I know how to do that. Yeah. Let's do that together. It's like the biology essays, seeing the biology with the automation at scale over the big data that is generated. This seemed to me like a tech bio, as it is called today. Mm-hmm. But kind of we were a perfect fit, for starting an idea like that.
Yeah, you mentioned. I want to get to that part about transitioning and learning, right? The bio aspect. You mentioned, in the beginning, being introduced to this technology, not knowing necessarily what a ribosome or RNA was, and then having these conversations with your co-founder. What's her name, by the way?
Iris Elroy.
Iris Elroy. So when you
she's the chief scientific officer of the company today.
Mm-hmm. And when you and Iris first started talking about the concept of building a business around this, and you were speaking entirely different languages, you hinted just now at the synergies. Like, hey, she knows what drug screening looks like and how this might benefit that application, and you know how to make the application hum. But what were some of maybe the more challenging aspects for you in your transition into biotech, learning biology, becoming a biologist, as you say?
So first I understood pretty quickly that I really don't know biology. And I decided that this is something that I have to know, but actually I became very interested because I was as an investor, as I said, in the company for a while, and then I became the chairman of the company, and then I became kind of an acting CEO of the company while it's still, in process. And I kind of started my journey, and I decided that I'm going to do it lightweight initially, and I was taking courses in biology online, universities. Mm-hmm. And it kind of became, 5 courses per year. And now we are talking about several years. So all of a sudden I'm with like 25 courses in biology behind me at the time that we are starting the company. So I didn't know about how actually it is done in the industry. So a drug screening platform, I wasn't aware of that, but I had the tools already to understand what it could do. And the idea of pathways in mRNA biology, what they mean, that we could see them, we could visualize them, we could find compounds that modulate them. Already I had that in mind. So now it connected back to the tech side, and I could envision how a large scale, I would say massively parallel automated system could run in a lab and actually do that training and basically analyze all that data. So it kind of was at the right time, coming to me while I understood already enough biology. I continued to study biology over the years, and actually I can interact, with any biologist from a pharma company, and I'm doing this routinely, although I usually deal more with the business side right now and the strategy of the company.
Mm-hmm. When you started to, I guess that's sort of a two-part question. When you started to sort of formulate the concept of the business, right? Like we've got something that we can build a business around. We've got a product, right, in development that we can build a business around. One, sort of tell me that story. Like when was the moment where you're like, okay, like this is more than cool technology. We've got something that we can develop into a sellable product. And then two, I guess on the back half of that question, building tech bio teams, especially then in the lead up to the launch of the company, it was a new concept. In hiring to outfit those teams with talent, to this day is a challenge. A lot of companies struggle with sort of the whole brain tech bio kind of approach. So I'm curious about how you built the team. So like I said, two-part question. There might be a big jump in between the two questions, but one, when was the aha moment? We've got something that we can build a company around. And then two, how did you go about building the company from an HR standpoint with talent that could meet your needs?
So the first one actually was not a singular moment, because while we were at the academia, we actually ventured out to partner with additional academic institutions, and we actually struck 17 academic collaborations that led to many publications. So it gave like more and more and more, kind of a feeling that there is something real here. Yeah. And we should be doing a real company around that technology. It's so unique. So I decided to take the technology out of the university, after I saw so many different applications and users, so to speak, that basically had a very limited research license to the very early phase to conduct a single experiment, so to speak, okay, and visualize their proteins and mRNAs of interest. And so that kind of occurred to me naturally. I wasn't at a point and say whether it is a company or not. It already kind of transitioned in my mind to what are we going to do with that as a company. And that meeting where I was kind of introduced, I asked the question, can we do treatments of diseases, discovery of drugs? And then I heard that there is this concept of screening, and big pharma companies are doing that, but not in that way and not with that technology. It was the aha moment for me. Okay, this is big. If we could do this, and then my question was right away, as you were saying, about the team, because I built companies in the past, and I know that this is extremely critical. There are many good ideas that people come to you with, and they say, I want to do this company. And you think about it, it's a great idea, but not for this team, because they cannot get it off the ground. They don't have the skill. So I was thinking, this is biology, imaging, bioinformatics, a lot of software, big data, data analysis. What kind of, and chemistry eventually. I was not aware of that in the beginning, but we built in-house a lot of chemistry. I was initially thinking this we can take from CROs outside and so on. So essentially, this is a multidisciplinary team and a hard team to build. So we had actually the biology and the image processing covered between the biologist co-founder and an image processing person. And then I brought all the software people from my previous companies quite easily, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the company's pretty sizable right now. I mean, I didn't take an official count, but I was kind of cruising through the website. You got a pretty stout team. How many people do you employ at this point?
Around 100.
Around 100, yeah. When you got that team together, the company's humming along. You're developing this technology, demonstrating its value. What's that, I guess, sales proposition? I don't want to say sales like in a salesy kind of way, but sort of that value proposition you go to the industry with and you say, AI, our application of AI that gives you valuable, like actionable imagery is better than AI that spits out prose, for instance. Lay that out.
It's like you are kind of asking a question about words and images, and you mentioned AI. Okay, so that's actually an interesting question, because we are seeing today AI coming into two different worlds: the world of words and the world of images, and they actually kind of came onto the scene almost at the same time, with generative AI for language and generative AI for images. And actually, when you look at it, you could say that so far, and maybe I can explain, I think, why, AI is actually better in images than words. And the reason that this is the case is that, actually humans are like that as well. If you think about it, words are ambiguous. Images are just data. It is what you see, okay? Yeah. Then you come to explain it, then you need the words, then different people will describe the same image in very different words. So basically, if you go and train AI on words, it gets all that ambiguity into it. So you train it on 1 million words, and it has millions of ambiguities. If you train it on millions of images, you are just giving it millions of examples of the thing.
Yeah.
So actually, if you will actually look at this in the context of applications, for example, if you try to explain what is the difference between a dog and a cat, and put it in language as rules, you will run out of paper space before you figure out that For every rule, there is an exception. And you cannot actually say what is the difference. But when you see a dog or a cat, you know the difference. You know if it's a cat or a dog. Now, AI will find it very hard to explain to you the difference between a cat and a dog. But give it 1 million examples of a cat and a dog to a neural network that is seeing those images. Give it now the 1,000,010 image and ask, is it a cat or the dog? It will immediately classify it correctly. So this is a very robust application of AI. The most robust application of AI actually is the ability to see in an image something and classify it versus it A or B.
Yeah.
Now, why is that even relevant to all we're talking about?
Yeah, maybe I was thinking that maybe I should have backed up a little bit and said, okay, let's talk about the AI aspect of Anima's solution before we got into the value of the imagery. But yeah, as you were saying.
So actually, yes, it's like, why do we need AI in biotech? Okay, maybe we should even start there. Okay, what's missing? What was not working?
Well, there's so much discussion around AI in biotech and so many levels of application of AI in biotech that I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there. Or I don't know if it's misunderstanding or just a general lack of understanding around the real killer apps, like the real potential of AI. So
yeah, this is exactly, I would say that this is, this comes to the question of what is AI really good at that we are not. Because if you want to bring AI, it has to have some value, and there is something that it can do that we cannot do. So it is really, when you try to purify this and to understand, it's about the ability to make sense of a lot of data.
Yeah.
And this is what AI is really good at. What people are not good at is to make sense of data, we are good at. And AI is actually sometimes struggling to come up with reasoning in quite simple situations. But when it's a lot of data and you try to make sense of it, you can't. So biotech is all about biology, and biology is a lot of data. And it's unrelated data that people are trying to connect together. So there are millions of publications about diseases and proteins and roles and targets and molecules and drugs. And it's extremely challenging just to understand the links between all of these elements. And you are biased towards what you know and what you have read. You don't know what you haven't read. So you can now use AI to summarize those things for you and find connections and discover mechanisms by kind of connecting that if A is related to B and B affects C, and C is a protein that is doing something with D, then there is a connection between A and D. And it's good at doing that, and it summarizes this into knowledge graphs that you can visually see it. And this is actually a powerful way to look and learn about diseases and mechanisms and targets that could be involved in diseases. Mm-hmm. But notice one thing, okay? And this comes again to the words versus the images. These are words. It is good in connecting the words when there are many, many words, but it is starting with the ambiguity that is in the words themselves.
Right.
So these publications have ambiguity. The data is incorrect. The assumptions are incorrect. It didn't understand what it is being said really. Eventually, the conclusions are not what is said in the abstract, but the abstract is telling the article, so that's kind of forward-looking statements into what could be done, but the experiment didn't prove it, and everybody is citing it back then afterwards as something of effect. So AI actually is good in images, and images are a completely different way to approach the whole problem. So if you're looking at experiments, all these publications, by the way, are after the fact summaries of priorly done experiments.
Right.
But those are very biased because of the words and because of the connections. So each of them may be good, but many of them are not. And then the connections are wrong. Now imagine that you could do it in a completely different way. And this comes actually later to what we have done also at Anima. If you are doing an experiment and you image it in images from inside the cells, looking at the biology at play, you are basically observing the real biology.
Yeah.
And most experiments really, those in publications, for example, they are measuring one parameter, okay? But if you could actually visualize an image, just like we people visualize a cat or a dog, we visualize at once 1,000 parameters, 100,000 parameters. We cannot even say what the parameters are. We don't think like that. We just visualize it. So imagine that you could generate millions of visualizations. For example, a disease like Alzheimer's. You take and you visualize 100 million cells in parallel at once, automatically, cells that are diseased and cells that are healthy. And now you give it to a neural network with AI to look at that and say, what is the difference? Now, it will not tell you the difference in words,
Right.
but it will understand the difference, just like the dogs and the cat. It doesn't explain what are the rules, but it knows now if they see a cell, is it diseased or healthy? Now, this is huge because now, if you can actually have the technology that is seeing, as we are seeing, the real biology pathways, for example, in mRNA biology, now you could go back to that knowledge graph, so to speak. Yeah. Now you're asking AI a much better question. You're telling him the difference in Alzheimer's disease between healthy and diseased cells, based on 100 million examples that I've seen, is this pathway. Go and figure out for me now, with your abilities, what are all the proteins along this pathway? Is any of them known to be associated with Alzheimer's? And now we are really into understanding the disease mechanism. But AI is more helpful, actually, if you give it real data, unbiased data, 100 million examples of it. This is where the real power of AI comes to play and shines at best.
Yeah, and I don't want to come off as sophomoric here, Yochi, but the skeptic. I'm gonna throw a skeptic's I guess perspective at you. We've played with AI imagery here in the office a bit. Consumer grade, right? So this is where I'm going to ask you for some differentiation, because the perception among perhaps many of our listeners who have only had that kind of consumer grade interaction with ChatGPT or whatever other image-based AI tools are out there, on Google, is like, I'm not so sure about the accuracy of the data, because when I ask it to, create a picture of a woman sitting on a chair, oftentimes the chair has 5 legs and the woman has 6 fingers on one hand. So we look at that and we go, well, I don't know if AI is that good at imagery. What's the difference here between the applications that you guys are building and the ensure, I guess, your assuredness around the accuracy of the tool in your application versus what so many see from sort of a consumer level?
So actually, what consumers see today, there are 2 things. One of them is generative AI for images, and indeed, this is the ability to create an image that is a new image. And those images can be stunning, but as you said, in the little details, it could miss. Yeah. But actually, I'm not talking about generating images by AI. I am actually talking about image understanding by AI, given an image that is the real image. It's not an image that AI generated. For example, Tesla is already offering self-driving vehicles. How does that work? And this is working. This is the most robust application actually of AI out there, and it has been working for a while because it comes back to something that the AI is really, really good at. Tesla has cameras that were on the cars, driving for a couple of years on 10,000 vehicles and taking videos, which are broken into images, of what roads and driving looks like. This is a stoplight, this is a road, this is a car, this is a person, this is a tree, this is a sign, this is this, this is that. You are seeing millions of examples of that, and then it becomes so much information and so many examples that it can actually drive in real time and knowing what's around. I'm talking about something that is extremely simpler than that even, which is, let's look at 150 million images taken from cells of a disease model. Now, these are real images that indeed we take with our imaging technology. but they are the ability to see and visualize the actual biology. It's not generated by AI. It's just taken with a microscope. It's a high-powered microscope that runs in an automated lab and takes 150 million images from all of these single cells. So the data is there. This is the biology. Now we apply image classification and understanding on top of it, just like the cat and the dog. Okay, it's a completely different paradigm.
Yeah. Okay. What does I'm curious as you describe this, and I'm understanding the value of that visualization of an actual cells. There's no room for ambiguity. There's no room for interpretation that you get with the written word. There's really not even like a sort of a time parameter that skews the data, because it's real. It's potentially real time, I would assume. I mean, the time factor is kind of taken off the table. What does the translation of the machine's understanding of what it's seeing to the human being who can do something about it look like? Does it remain visual through the application state, or is it at some point, is it subject to analysis in a visual form, and then decisions are made based on that visual analysis? So I guess I'm wondering like what the action point is at the end of the process.
So let me describe to you our platform and how it is applied, because this is essentially how we are connecting all of these things together and where basically we are bringing it to add value. Mm-hmm. So really, in a nutshell, our platform, it's called mRNA Lightning. And mRNA Lightning platform visualizes and decodes the mRNA life cycle and is used in multiple applications of drugs and target discovery, RNA drug optimization, mRNA vaccines optimization, anything that relates essentially to, I would say, drugs and vaccines in mRNA, okay? Which is a particular specific area in biology, but an extremely promising one and a very big one. Yeah. Okay? As we've seen with COVID, for example. Yeah. So we have really an automated mRNA visualization screening technology. We generated over the last decade more than 2 billion images of mRNA biology. And this was done in dozens of diseases, cell types, conditions. And we use this massive data set to train disease-specific, what we call AI imaging neural networks. And they are capable of recognizing what we are calling disease signatures. This is really the difference between disease and healthy cells in a disease. And it's a particular mRNA biology pathway, because the visualization technology enables us to take 50 different visualizations in each cell. Each of them is a pathway in mRNA biology regulation. Mm-hmm. So it's something super important in the regulation of the mRNA. Now, what happens now is that once the differentiation between healthy state and disease state is kind of seen in 150 million images, the AI neural network kind of extracts the disease signature, that pathway, out of it. It tells you this is the difference. And this is actually a huge step towards answering the biggest question of all, which is, why is the disease happening in the first place? Yeah. What's the disease mechanism? What's the underlying disease mechanism? So essentially now, after the screening phase and the generation of that deep data in images, you have an image bank that is almost like the disease atlas, if you want to call it like that. It shows you why the disease is different from healthy state. However, you want to actually do something about it. So this is where the AI analysis of the massive data set actually comes into play and turns it into numbers. It quantifies everything for you, and it analyzes it, and it suggests novel targets. And it enables you to get started with the next phase, which is screening for compounds that would modulate exactly that pathway and will identify for you a drug, basically. So it's a drug and target discovery platform. In the same way, and by the way, this data that is generated and gives you like unparalleled insight into the disease mechanisms, and it aids you in optimization of drugs and discovery and prioritization of targets. The words are coming now back. The world is coming back because into the system, we plugged in a large language model, which is the mRNA Lightning LLM. Now, we are not in the business of developing LLMs. Nobody is, other than a few companies in the world. Yeah. But you can bring them in if you have data that is robust, that is unambiguous. They will be actually very good at that. So we are bringing in LLM, and we've built a chat-based interface through ChatGPT, which we call the mRNA Lightning Copilot of the system. And you can interact with the data in natural language. And all this analysis, screens, and all these information is actually presented by the system. So it's an automated screening now of compounds follows, and we identify hits, compounds that modulate this, and then we optimize them. So it's a full-scale drug discovery and optimization platform. More recently, we developed applications that are for vaccine optimization, for RNAi drugs, siRNA, ASO optimization, and all this platform really runs in a massively parallel automated lab architecture, and the screening is really high content, but it's done in high throughput, like huge data that is generated, and it's finally also an open system, so you can extract all the data to other AI analysis tools, in case that our analysis, for whatever reason, is not what you want.
When you mentioned the vaccine and RNA therapeutic optimization additions that are more recent. When you began, I'm just wondering sort of your strategy or your approach around the development of the platform itself. You start out, you're like, hey, we could use this. This is a great tool for target discovery, or a great tool for molecular discovery, small molecule drug discovery. Did the additional applications kind of unfold as you saw the technology having a fit there, or are those things that you thought, well, we need to go chase that down because our mRNA vaccines are a big market opportunity, and we need to make our application work there? How did sort of that evolution, I guess, of the platform happen?
So I'm actually looking at things from my previous companies, and there are two things. One is a product, which most people are focused on, and the other one is a market, which most people forget about. So it's so much harder to succeed in a company where there is no market for what you're doing than when to succeed with a product when there is a market, even if your product is not so good. So and our product excels, and we started it in small molecule drug discovery, that screening of compounds that basically are modifying the image as they are in the cells. You kind of turn it into a massive unbiased drug discovery screening campaign by taking, let's say, 300,000 molecules, and each of these, when they are in the cells, if they do something to the mRNA biology, they will change the image. And now we are back to the dogs and the cats, but now we are looking for a molecule that will make the image look more like a dog and less like a cat. So the hits are those that are modifying the images from the diseased to the healthy. And the AI has a neural network that can tell, given an image, what it looks like more. So it flags for you those that are active on the mRNA biology pathway. So you know that you've got a compound that is active. You even know already almost where it is working. And this is huge. Maybe we'll get to that later about the mechanism of action. Usually that's an after the fact, hard and mostly not unsuccessful challenge. Here, you can get it even before you start. You just are guided to it. So when I looked at this, I said, okay, we've got this working. We did 3 partnerships with big pharma companies, Lilly, Takeda, and Abbvie. we've got that application fully figured out, and we are developing a pipeline of our own. And I was around, presenting the story, talking about it, and all of a sudden I start to hear people coming to me, and they say, well, we are in mRNA vaccines, and if we could visualize the vaccine, which is an mRNA, inside the cells with your technology, we could actually profile 200,000 different designs, and you can actually visualize which one looks better. Now, and I asked them, what does it mean look better? In my terminology, healthy and diseased. I'm moving from disease to healthy, but here is a vaccine, and right, they're all the same cells. They say, no, healthy and diseased, switch them for less efficacy, more efficacy. So we want the vaccines that are translating the most protein and in the right place. And we want, could you actually find, for us, by comparing all of them, which ones look the best? So let's throw 200,000 into your system, massively parallel environment like this. You screen them, you come back with 10,000, with 100,000, or 50,000, 40,000, whatever the screening success rate is. It will usually be like 20-to-1 reduction right away. And then you throw them back and you say, okay, permutate a little bit about those, bring them back for a second optimization run, and now you will have maybe only, 2,000. And every time we visualize and compare, and it's a race between the vaccines. Yeah. You can see that this is the same thing, actually. It's the same technology applied to a different problem. Now, siRNA drugs have this problem, which is the endosomal escape challenge. 99% of the RNA, of the siRNA, actually gets trapped in there and never gets into the cytoplasm of the cell. But we see it, we see where it is, so we could do things, that modify and enable you to choose those that are actually best in doing that. So again, it's the same stuff. So if you have a machine like that, a machine, it's not a machine, it's an architecture, a platform like that, and it can visualize the biology inside cells, it's applicable to all these problems. So now we are interacting as potential partners with companies that are coming from vaccines and siRNA drugs, and we are exploring, the value of the technology in partnership mode. We are not going to develop those, but we are going to offer the technology for those problems.
Yeah, very, very cool. You mentioned MOA, and I do have a specific question about that because, as you know, plenty of drugs get approved and go to market. There are drugs that have been in the market and in patients for years and years and years where we still don't have a thorough understanding of that drug's mechanism of action. We know it's safe, we know it's effective, name your drug. So why is it important now? Like, give us some perspective on why this advantage of your platform that gives you early access to an understanding of mechanism of action. Why is that important now when we've kind of been living blissfully ignorant of so many mechanisms of action for as long as we have?
So indeed, about half of the drugs that have been approved were approved without an understanding of the mechanism of action. But this is the old, I would say, game. Right now, if you speak with a pharmaceutical company and you've got a compound and it's a great compound, but you don't know how it's working, then unless you go all the way to clinical trials and validate that it's safe and the efficacy is there, they will not want to touch it. So, and the reason is that the side effects of that compound could be that it touches upon targets that are bad targets, that have failed already in the clinic. So the idea is this: yes, if you have the money and you want to go by yourself all the way to do all the clinical trials, and only there, you will find out, or maybe you don't have to find out, it's just a matter of spending so much money, and maybe you could avoid it if you knew the mechanism of action. Because if the mechanism of action is going through certain proteins, kinase, for example, that has multiple functions, and your drug is hitting that kinase as a side effect that you are not aware of, that's like already known to be downstream big problem, and they will avoid the project altogether. So I've seen that pharmas are actually very, very sensitive to know the mechanism of action of the target before they will actually invest to go to the clinic with the product. You can develop them all the way to preclinical and not know it, but it is hard today to convince people to go for I would say, project without the mechanism of action, and it forces you to go into the clinic almost on your own.
Yeah.
And this is a very expensive proposition, especially if you have a broad pipeline. However, if you look at what is happening today with technology, that's a very, very challenging problem. Given a molecule, how does it actually do its magic? It's a harder problem than finding the molecule sometimes.
Yeah, right.
And how do you solve that? So we used to solve it by a technology that we introduced 3 years ago called MOAI, Mechanism of Action with AI, which was kind of taking a backward look. Here's the molecule, here's the data that we had before during the screening, try to figure that out for me. But that's really challenging still, even for us. I mean, we had great success with it, and in I would say 5 out of 8 projects in the last 3 years, we've done it successfully. That's 10 times better than the success rate of the industry already. Yeah. But what we are doing now is the neural networks and the ability to actually see right from the beginning what is the pathway that is different between the healthy and the diseased cells. It's like already knowing the MOA almost. You are there in the neighborhood of the target. Yeah. So that's a game changer. That's turning the pyramid on its head. It's not starting the project and hoping to find the MOA in the beginning. It's starting the project, understanding what you are going to target, and then actually screening from there. So it's really an interesting proposition. Now, you can do this, as some companies are trying, with words, as we said, looking at the publications, looking at the disease, what is known, come up with ideas for targets. I think that our approach, which is unbiasedly just looking at the biology, give the AI 100 million examples, it will tell you the pathway. Now go with that pathway to the LLM and ask it what it knows from publications about it. Yeah. That's a much more powerful approach in our opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, and that approach. So if a listener tuned into this episode, I don't know, 30 minutes ago, missed my preamble, but tuned in 30 minutes ago and heard this conversation, they would think that I was having a conversation with a technology a drug discovery platform developer, and you are that discovery, target, optimization, but at the same time you're developing drugs. And the more I talk to you, the more I wonder why. Like, you've got this platform that does amazing things. You've got partnerships with Big Bio who are leveraging the platform to enable their own discovery and understanding efforts. You've had great partnerships with academia on the technology itself. Why not just go to market with the technology itself, offer it as a service? And let other people do the drug development. Why did you build a pipeline? Or why are you building, I should say, a pipeline?
That's actually a dilemma that every platform technology company has. And the way that it starts is that if you come with the technology and you talk about the promise of that technology to pharma, it's going to be very, very hard sell, because they ask you, did you find something? Did you discover something with your technology? Has anybody else done that? So either you show that you are doing it, or you show another partner that has done it, or several of them. So we had to develop a pipeline first to prove that it works to ourselves. Second, to prove to partners that it works. Third, because there is value in those molecules, and we were able to fund the development. It's kind of feeding each other. You develop your own pipeline, you use your platform, you understand how your partners would be using it as well. You fix things, you improve things, you test it. So you are using your pipeline as the way to advance your platform, and you use your platform as the way to advance your pipeline. But if you ask me what the next step is, that's the inflection point that you need to take a decision. Because if you want to go to the clinic, and we are pretty close already there.
Yeah.
Okay. So then it becomes a decision. How do you continue to become both? And this is a decision that we are thinking about. We are actually, by the end of maybe of this year or early next year, we're there. And it requires a different, maybe thinking about it. But we are seeing so much interest in the platform right now. AI for mRNA biology is unique. We are, by the way, the only company, we've been in a peer group of 32 companies in small molecule mRNA drugs. Mm-hmm. Go and find another one that has an AI story to tell. So we were from the very beginning very different, but we were in a place where we were looking similar. And now we kind of diverged from that peer group altogether, and we are really showing, why the platform is so different, because it's really an AI tech bio platform on the basis of that rich deep data that is generated from millions of images, completely different from the target-based approaches of designing molecules to bind into mRNAs or affect its biology in a certain way. It's a different idea, different concept. And now we are seeing that it's much bigger than we thought. It's not even just limited to that. mRNA in small molecule drugs, it's so much bigger than that. So all this strategic thinking is actually happening and is driven by a pull from the market, less than a push, by us. And it's a good place to be in, actually. I like this in kind of interaction.
Do you think that, is there a chance that should the pull lead you down that clinical path, like as a businessman, as the man, in charge of the company's direction, should the therapeutic pull lead you toward that clinical path? Could you see Anima becoming a clinical grade, a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company, or do you think that'll be something that you'd probably partner out? I mean, maybe it's too early to tell. I'm not asking you to. You don't have to answer the question if you're not, prepared to or able to.
The answer is that so far we've been under the assumption that the answer is yes. Okay, and we were able to do both. We were able to partner. We've done 3 big partnerships in our space, by the way, where we started, and as I said, there are over 30 companies there. Actually, there were not so many deals done. We've done 3. There is one company that did actually 5, and then the next 2 companies did 2, about 5 did 1, and all the rest never done a single deal. So it tells you that the field is very much in the beginning, in the early phases, and the pharmas are still looking at it, learning and trying, but there are no it's not like completely all over the place and everybody's looking for it. At the same time, if you think about it, mRNA is in the market.
Yeah.
In vaccines and in RNAi drugs. So to apply our platform to things that are close to the market or in the market, from a business standpoint, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I don't want to develop them. I want to work with my partners there. So I definitely see Anima continuing to do partnerships, and many of them in many different areas. And we are at the same time moving our pipeline forward. It will come to the point of whether we license it out, whether we are,
Sure.
continuing with certain ones, maybe with spin-off companies like some other companies have done, to take individual assets to the clinic. That's also a possibility. There are many ways to go about it.
Yeah. And those partnerships are, as I mentioned from the outset, strong. I mean, you got some Abbvie, Takeda, Lilly. I mean, great partnerships. And we're kind of running short on time here, Yochi. So I can't ask you to go into too much depth on how those partnerships came to fruition. But, if you care to share any more detail on the partner, I guess the details behind the partnerships with those 3 companies.
So they were published, in press releases, and we got from all of them very big upfronts and milestone payments and research funding, and it's those $1 billion plus deals that you hear about with a lot of potential. But for me, what is important is really not all of that, because that's just an evidence that someone else is seeing value in your big vision and in your technology approach. Otherwise, you don't get, these partners, and definitely not at that scale. And I think that there are two things that they're looking for: tactical, which is molecules. They're buying mostly molecules. And in the environment right now, it's all like shopping for molecules. Molecules are cheap. Pharmaceutical companies are loaded with cash. Biotech companies have problems to raise funding because of lower valuation, so they sell assets, and it's kind of a lot of assets for cheap are on the streets. So to do a technology platform deal, it's even harder in an environment like this unless you are really, really valuable, because that's like investing at long-term strategic stuff when you can buy with your money something that you can take to the clinic right away. I think that we have that, and I think that our deals were like that, and because of that, because this is strategic, this is transformational. AI with mRNA biology, I think that's big. So I'm very motivated to continue to do that, and we are getting all the right signals that there will be more of that nature.
Yeah, very good. All right, one last question, and then we got to wrap things up. What's the next big thing on Yochi Slonim's plate? Like what are you looking at your, I don't know, next few weeks, next few months? Like, what are you staring down right now?
So if you say the next few weeks and the next few months, it's actually very short time frame. Okay.
Yeah. All right. And I know we work in much longer time frames. That was an unfair question. Let's say quarters.
Okay. So we are now in the process of really rolling out the full big vision of our platform, offering the platform to partners across its different applications. We are building business models that are sometimes different from each other for different applications. We are having so many different conversations right now about that. And many of these are with people that are AI people in those companies. We are even have conversations with tech companies, big tech companies like NVIDIA, is a big tech company. I'm not saying specifically we're talking to them, but I'm giving an example. Google, Microsoft. These are interested in the data and the ability to apply AI over data that is proprietary. It's data that comes from diseases that have never been visualized before. Here is a visualization of a healthy and diseased. And what's the difference? Bring AI with all its power to work on that. So we are thinking about all of these things. This is very exciting, very big, and very new. And at the same time, we are very, very connected to the reality of running, a tight ship. This is a business that has to continue and has to be careful because times are actually not amazing still, to say the least, for biotech companies. So we are well funded. We have the ability with our partners to move forward. We've got, a lot of stuff going on in development. And this is remaining our focus going forward.
Yeah, very good. Well, it's super exciting technology. I mean, if you're thinking about where's the real deal in terms of high tech in biotech, Anima Biotech is exemplary. AnimaBiotech.com if folks want to learn more. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. I appreciate you for being so gracious with your time. I've abused it, but I'm glad I did because I've enjoyed the conversation and I've learned a whole lot. So thank you very much for coming out and joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. So that's Anima Biotech co-founder and CEO Yochi Slonim. I'm Matt Pillar, and this is the Business of Biotech. Be sure to visit our new videocast page under the Listen and Watch tab at bioprocessonline.com, where you can find this and hundreds of other videos of my interviews with biotech builders. While you're there, subscribe to our Business of Biotech newsletter at bioprocessonline.com/BOB. In the meantime, we'll see you next week, and thanks for listening.